Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about how to cancel a gig. Nobody wants to cancel a gig. The last thing I want to do is cancel a gig. Anytime that you have to cancel a gig, in the back of your mind, you got to be thinking, I might never work for this person again. That's a fact. It's sad, but it's a fact. If you go to a job and you work 9 to 5 and you're employed by an employer and you call out sick and you have a doctor's note, you cannot legally discriminate against that employee. But if you're a magician and you're in the hospital and you have to cancel a gig, you might never work for that person again. That is a reality. There's no such thing as FMLA. There's no such thing as protections under the law as there are for employees. You are an independent entrepreneur, and if you've canceled a gig, there's a good chance they'll never hire you again because they had an event that now they have no one for. And so it leaves them in a bad spot, it leaves them in a bad position, and they're angry about it, and they take it out on you. I speak by experience. However, there are times when not only could you, but you should cancel a gig. Despite that. And I'm going to tell you what those are. And by the way, the reason I'm doing this is twofold. Number one, I've had difficulty myself. And by the way, at this point, knock on wood, at this point in my career, I've only had to do this one time. And that one time, that person will not deal with me. That one time. And I'm going to tell you what the details were. But the reason I decided to do this, there are a number of magicians groups on Facebook. And a magician writes and says, I have a gig today. However, there's a blizzard in my neighborhood, in my area, and there's a foot of snow on the ground, and there are travel warnings in effect. And the news is saying that you should not go out unless it's an absolute emergency. And I want to know what you guys think. And the majority that were commenting on that post said, health and safety first. Protect yourself. Granted, you might lose that client, but, so be it. So here is, in my opinion, these are the reasons why you might cancel a gig. Health and safety. You know what? I was a corporate trainer for 27 years. And I used to teach my employees health and safety first. Health and safety first. Everything else falls under that. Every other consideration comes under that. If that gentleman had ventured out in the snow and had gotten himself into an accident, What is that worth it? Now, health and safety first. Now, personal illness. In our day and age, if you go out and do a show and you're COVID positive, you've done a disservice to those clients. You don't do that. You honor the CDC guidelines and you isolate. And that means you have to cancel a gig, and that means you might not get the other gig, and they might not. That's fine. Health and safety first. Illness, your own personal illness, a family emergency, or danger. And by that I mean it's a blizzard, there's snow on the ground. If the situation is dangerous, you don't go. If your health is in jeopardy, you don't go. Now, some of you that love magic history might be thinking, whoa, wait a minute, Dave. Houdini performed with a 103-degree temperature and a ruptured appendix. Well, yeah, and he's dead. He died that night. Not that night, but he lingered in the hospital and later subsequently died. He should have been in the hospital. So my feeling is this. You need to cancel those gigs for those reasons. Now, it happens to all of us. We have family emergencies. We have sickness. You want to do your best to try to preserve that relationship. Despite your best efforts, you may not. And I've lost a relationship. And I'll tell you the story real quick. It was the autumn of 2022, I think it was. And I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was having a bad reaction to food, but I had what was becoming a gangrenous gallbladder. And I had a gig set up for the end of October, the middle of October. And I ended up in the hospital. And so I called to cancel the gig, and we rescheduled it. We rescheduled the gig. It was a couple of weeks later after the gig. Well, the surgery went well, but there were complications. I'm not going to divulge what happened, but let's put it this way: I was unable to leave. There were complications because of the surgery, and it would have, if it hadn't been for the complications, it would have been a slam dunk. I'd have been at the show. There have been no problems at all. But there were complications, and I had to cancel a second time, the same vendor the second time. Well, now, I solicited her recently, and she says, well, you've canceled on us multiple times, and we've gotten another magician. So that's the way it is. And I responded to that, and I said, well, I didn't cancel multiple times. I canceled twice. Maybe that is multiple times, but it was twice, and it was because of these reasons. And I shared that with her. I fully disclosed it at the time, but the idea that the client's gone on to another magician, okay. So, but I'll tell you what, it's a competitive field out there, and there's a magician on every corner, and the clients that we deal with, for the most part, they don't have a hard time finding someone to replace you, and that's where we are. And that's the reality of it. So I kind of have to live with that, and I don't like it, but I have to live with it. But here are 5 things that you can do to lessen the potential of dealing with that kind of a scenario. Number 1, communicate and make contact as soon as possible. Now, when I say make contact, they may not see the email. They might not see the text message. You need to make every effort to make sure that cancellation is acknowledged. Because what you don't want is for them to be expecting you on show day and you don't show. Everybody's set up and ready, the stage is ready, the audience is there, and there's no performer. That's not what you want, ever, ever. So you make contact. You make sure you make contact. You make sure, if you can, if at all possible, you have a conversation with the person who booked you and make sure they understand exactly what your reason is. Don't beat around the bush. Don't be vague. I'm in the hospital with a gallbladder operation. Be that specific. Number 2, and you know what? I used to, back in the day, I had a roster of performers, and I would call up and I would say, I can't make the gig tonight, but I have this performer, that performer, and if you want, I'll contact them, or you can contact them. I used to do that, but today, I will do that if the client says to me, if I'm talking to the client and the client says to me, I got to show, what am I supposed to do? If they say that to me, then I will say, well, I have this performer, that performer, we can reach out to them together, or you can do it, or I will do it, but we can try to get you somebody else lined up. I will do that if they say that, but see, 9 times out of 10, they've already got a backlog of performers. They already know who they want. So I don't offer anymore. I call them up and I say, I can't make the gig, it's for this reason, and I let it go there. If they want me to offer something, I will. If not, I don't automatically offer, and I suggest that to you as well. Number 3, give as much notice as you possibly can. Again, what you do not want under any circumstance is for a crowd to be gathered and have no performer. That is really not a good thing. So give them as much notice as possible. The minute you know that you can't make it, you get on the phone with them and you make sure they understand. Only cancel for a good reason. I have read I have read, and I've not done this, I've never done this, but I've read about performers who will book, for example, a $250 show, and then they get a $1,000 show on the same day, the same time, and they'll cancel the $250 show. That's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. I would rather say to that client who's got the higher end show, I'm booked that day, and have that show go to somebody else, than violate that commitment for that reason. As I stated at the beginning of this video, health and safety. Your health, your family's health, your safety, your family's safety. That's why you cancel. I don't think canceling for a higher paying gig is a good idea. That's going to hurt your reputation. I think. You can comment down below and tell me what you think. I'd love to hear about it. Only cancel for a good reason. Number 5, be as respectful and be as gracious as you possibly can be, even if they're rotten to you, even if they're screaming and yelling at you and cussing at you and doing all that stuff, even if they're reacting, be gracious and be respectful. Do not ever express your anger or frustration. Even if their reaction is unreasonable, just don't do it. So those are my 5 steps for potentially avoiding problems. In conclusion, know that when you cancel, you might be losing that client forever. But here's the thing. It's worth it to me to lose a client forever who would want to do that, who would want to ruin the relationship because I'm in the hospital. Right? Am I right? Do you want clients like that in your roster? No, they're not worth it. If the client is rude to you, if the client is not understanding, they're not compassionate, they don't want to cooperate with you, take them off your roster. Don't call on them anymore. You don't need that. You're a professional. They should be professionals. If they don't want to deal with it, get rid of them. Believe it or not, I think that one of the big problems, particularly with up-and-coming magicians, is the sense of deprivation. I'm not getting enough shows. I don't have enough income. I don't have enough money stream. And so you're willing to do things and work with people and put yourself out there in a way that if you were very successful, you'd never do. Now think about your business this way. If I was making more money than I could possibly imagine, if I had more gigs than I could possibly handle, would I deal with this client? If the answer's no, then get them off your roster now. Don't deal with them. Have the self-esteem to say, you know what? I respect your opinion. Goodbye. And go on to somebody else. Just as there are many fish in the sea for that client, there are many fish in the sea for you. And you don't have to do business with anyone you don't want to do business with. That's simple. That's simple. If you want to work for them, however, you really like them, you really like the facility, you really like the organization, whatever, be tenacious. Not in a negative way, not in an obnoxious way, but just keep coming at them. Eventually they'll come around. If you want to do that, that's up to you. Finally, folks, here's a scenario for you. You had a medical emergency. Maybe it was COVID, maybe it's something else. You had a medical emergency, you canceled a gig. They hate you, right? They hate you. And they've expressed that to you. Forgive yourself. Don't carry it around. Just say, look, I made the best decision for me at this particular moment. I forgive myself and move on. That's it. Just forget. Shut the door. Just move on. Folks, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please comment down below. I hope you do, because this is one of those topics that requires some conversation. Comment down below. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. Have a great day.